You know the feeling. It's 2 a.m. And that tick, tick, tick of the clock isn't just background noise anymore. It feels like an indictment, doesn't it? You, with a mind built for high-resolution analysis, for seeing the big picture, stuck. Paralyzed by the glow of a blank cursor after spending 3 hours on a Wikipedia deep dive about something completely random like 14th century architecture. You've got the talent, you've got the vision, but you can't start. Today, we're going to change that. We're not just finding a way to work, we're breaking the loop of the genius who cannot begin. And this, right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. You're not scared of failing. No, you're scared of being average. It's that chasm between the flawless, perfect, 8K masterpiece you see in your head and the clunky, messy reality of what your hands might actually produce on the first try. That feeling? That's what we call the perfectionist's tax. So let's dive into this problem. Let's really name it. We're calling it the high-resolution cage. This is the paradox where your greatest strength, your incredibly high standards, becomes the very thing that traps you. Now look at this. This is the massive disconnect. On the one hand, society looks at what you're doing, or, not doing, and just slaps a label on it. Laziness, lack of discipline. But what's really going on under the hood? Well, it's something way more complex. It's not a moral failure at all. It's a sophisticated biological self-protection mechanism. Your brain is actually trying to protect you. And this is the result. You end up in this intellectual stalemate. It's a trap, but it's a trap you built yourself, out of your own brilliance. The very standards that make you so good are the bars of the cage that keep you from even starting. It's a tough spot to be in, created not by a lack of talent, but by having so much of it. All right, so to dismantle a cage this strong, we can't just throw some motivational quotes at it. Hustle culture platitudes are useless here. No, we have to go deeper. We have to get into the mechanical guts of our own biology to understand why your brain is treating a simple document like it's a life or death threat. And here's the culprit. It's called an amygdala hijack. You see, when you face a high-stakes task, one where your identity feels like it's on the line, your brain's ancient alarm system, the amygdala, kicks in. It doesn't see a project, it literally sees a predator. The risk of being mediocre feels like a threat to your survival, so it floods your system with stress hormones and shoves your logical, rational brain right out of the driver's seat. So what you're experiencing is your own brain sabotaging the work to protect your ego. Since you can't physically fight a blank page, your brain chooses flight. And that flight looks like distraction, procrastination, anything to avoid the perceived social death of not being perfect. It's literally a war inside your head, your primitive brain versus your evolved mind. We can actually break this down with a formula for what's called executive overload. Just look at this. Resistance goes through the roof when the perceived stakes and the complexity of the task are bigger than your regulatory capacity, which is basically just your emotional battery for dealing with stress. This proves it. This isn't a time management problem. It's an emotion regulation problem. Okay, so if we're basically at war with our own biology, how in the world do we negotiate a truce? How do we calm that terrified sentry in our brain? Well, we start with something that sounds simple but is incredibly powerful. We start by giving ourselves permission to be messy. And this leads us to a beautifully counterintuitive strategy, the bad draft protocol. I know, it sounds crazy, but hear me out. Your goal is no longer to create something good. For the first pass, your explicit, stated goal is to create garbage. By making bad the objective, you perform a brilliant trick on your amygdala. If the goal is to fail, there's no threat to your identity, and that alarm system just stands down. This is such a critical reframe. You have to remember, you cannot edit a blank page. It's impossible. That first version of anything, isn't the final product. It's just the ugly, temporary wooden scaffolding you build around the spot where the masterpiece will eventually go. You need that scaffolding before you can even dream of having the cathedral. Right? Or think of a sculptor. They don't start by carving the delicate eyelashes on a statue. Of course not. They start with a giant, crude, shapeless block of stone or a lump of clay. They just start hacking away, making a mess, finding the basic shape first. And that is exactly what your first draft is. It is that lump of clay. It's supposed to be messy. It's supposed to be shapeless. It's the raw material you'll refine later. Giving yourself permission for it to be bad is what gives you back your power to think and create. So now that we've hopefully shifted our mindset, we need a practical, tactical way in. We need a surgical strike to break through the paralysis without setting off all those biological alarms again. This is the 5-minute nano start. It's so simple. First, you set a timer for just 5 minutes. Your brain won't see that as a threat. Second, you write a deliberately terrible first sentence. Just get words on the page. Third, and this is key, you reward yourself for the act of starting, not for finishing. This starts rewiring your brain. And finally, when that urge to check your phone hits, just notice it. Sit with it for a minute without acting on it. You're building your focus muscle. All right, let's pull all this together and lock in this new identity. This is about a fundamental shift in your role, from being the critic of some imaginary future to being the architect of your real present. That 8K masterpiece in your mind, that perfect future, it's a phantom. And right now, that phantom is stealing all the momentum you could be building today in your real, tangible, messy present. Your job is to stop worrying about the ideal outcome and just prioritize the immediate action. And this right here is what redefines success for a high achiever. Your value, your identity, it's not wrapped up in that final, polished thing. It's found in something much harder and much more admirable. The simple, profound courage to just begin. So that's the choice it all comes down to, isn't it? It's a conscious decision about who you want to be. Are you going to stay paralyzed, the critic of a perfect future that might never show up? Or are you going to pick up the tools, embrace the mess, and become the architect of your actual, real, and maybe even beautiful present? The choice is yours.
Have you ever just stared at a blank page, feeling totally and completely paralyzed? Well, I've got good news. It turns out you're not lazy, and it's definitely not some kind of moral failing. The truth is, your procrastination is actually a super high-functioning self-protection system built right into your brain. Let's dive in and see how it works.
I know, it sounds a little dramatic, right? A predator? But for your brain's ancient survival wiring, that's exactly the choice it's making. When your intellectual identity is on the line, we're talking a big report, a business plan, any kind of creative work. Your brain doesn't see a simple item on your to-do list. No, it sees a threat.
So why a predator? Seriously, why so dramatic? Well, it's because when your reputation and your self-image are at stake, the possibility of failure isn't just a little disappointing. To your brain's ancient alarm system, it's a threat to your social standing, and for our ancestors, that was a threat to survival itself. Your brain isn't just protecting you from a bad grade, it's literally defending your very sense of who you are.
Okay, and this slide gets to the absolute heart of it. This term, prediction error, this is the core fear. See, you have this beautiful 8K high-definition vision of who you are and what you're capable of producing. But that first draft? Yeah, it's never 8K. It's messy, it's low-res. And that gap, that's the error your brain is desperately trying to save you from.
So that leads us to the how. What are the actual mechanics of this defensive reaction? Because it's a real physiological event. It's basically a war inside your head, a battle between two very different parts of your brain for control of the driver's seat. So, on one side, you've got your prefrontal cortex. You can think of it as the rational CEO of your brain. It's the part that makes long-term plans, understands deadlines, and thinks logically. But on the other side, you have the amygdala, your ancient, instinctual bodyguard. Its only job is to sniff out threats and keep you safe, right here, right now.
And when that bodyguard, the amygdala, senses that prediction error as a major threat, it triggers what we call an amygdala hijack. And this is not a polite suggestion. This is an emergency takeover. It's a coup. The bodyguard shoves the CEO aside, grabs the steering wheel, and slams on the panic button.
So, the bodyguard has taken over. What now? Well, your system gets flooded with stress hormones, like cortisol. And since you can't physically punch a blank page or run away from a deadline, your brain chooses the next best thing, flight. And this is where that productive procrastination comes in. Cleaning your desk, meticulously organizing files, answering emails from a week ago. These little tasks give you a quick hit of dopamine, a little chemical reward that temporarily hides the massive stress of the real work you're avoiding.
And you know what's wild? This feeling, this internal tug-of-war, it's not just some vague, fuzzy feeling. We can actually quantify it. There's a formula that makes the sense of resistance totally tangible and shows you exactly why it feels so incredibly overwhelming sometimes.
So here it is. Resistance equals perceived stakes times complexity, all of that divided by your regulatory capacity.
Now think of regulatory capacity as your brain's willpower battery for the day. When the stakes feel really high and the task is super complex, the number on top of that equation gets huge. And if your mental battery is already running low, that resistance becomes completely overpowering. And the result? Yep, total paralysis.
And this right here, this gets to the absolute core of the issue. This whole thing, it was never a time management problem. It's an emotion regulation problem. Your brain is actively sabotaging the work to protect your ego from the perceived threat of a messy, imperfect first attempt. It's all about managing your feelings, not managing the clock.
So, if this is a biological reaction, if it's our own bodyguard going rogue, how do we fight back? Well, here's the good news. We don't. We negotiate. Once you realize your brain is just a terrified sentinel trying to protect you, you can use these clever, targeted strategies, let's call them surgical strikes, to calm it down and gently take back control. All right, strike number 1, the 5-minute nano start. You commit to working for exactly 5 minutes. That is it. 5 minutes. This time frame is so small, so non-threatening, that it flies completely under the amygdala's threat detection radar. It's not big enough to trigger the alarm, but guess what? It's almost always enough to get you started.
Next up, one of my favorites is the messy first line. To break the spell of that perfect, terrifyingly blank page, you just intentionally write something awful. Literally, type out the words, "This is a bad sentence about a topic I am avoiding." Boom. All the pressure is gone, the seal is broken, you can start for real now.
But what about when that impulse to check your phone or open a new tab hits you like a tidal wave? That's your flight response kicking in. Don't fight it, surf it. First, just acknowledge the urge. Say, there it is. Then, commit to waiting just 2 minutes before you give in. And in those 2 minutes, just observe the feeling. Watch that wave of impulse rise, peak, and then crash. Every single time you do this, you are literally building your neural brake pedal.
And our last surgical strike is all about hacking your brain's reward system. It's called dopamine stacking. To really beat procrastination, you have to rewire what your brain finds rewarding. Stop waiting for that huge dopamine hit you get from finishing the entire project weeks from now. Instead, start creating it yourself by celebrating the act of starting. Did you just open the file? Acknowledge that as a win. This teaches your brain to associate the very first step with the reward, which makes it so much easier to start next time.
So you see, all these little techniques and tricks, they're not just tricks, they are tools that point to a final, really powerful mindset shift. It's about changing your entire identity in relation to your work. It's time to stop letting the ghost of some perfect future paralyze the very real potential of your messy present.
Ultimately, it really all comes down to this. You are the architect, not the critic. Your job is just to lay one brick at a time, no matter how crooked or messy it looks at first. True self-worth isn't found in some flawless final product. It's found in the courage to just show up, to face that resistance head-on, and to observe your own struggle without judging yourself. So the only real question left is, are you ready to start building? All right, let's just get right into it, because we've all been there, right? Picture this. It's 2 in the morning, you are a brilliant person, you have this incredible vision, you absolutely have the talent, and you are just staring at a blank, blinking cursor, completely and totally frozen. Now, you're not lazy. You're paralyzed by this immense pressure to create a masterpiece from the very first word. So today, we're not just going to talk about it, we are going to install a brand new protocol in your brain to break that loop for good.
And this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? The problem isn't that you're afraid you can't do the work. No way. It's that you're terrified, truly terrified, that the work you produce might not live up to that spectacular 8K resolution vision you have perfectly constructed in your mind. This fear of just being average, that's the real enemy of getting anything done.
So, okay, let's give this enemy a name. Let's call it the perfectionist's tax. This is the absolutely crippling price you pay when your greatest strength, your incredibly high standards, becomes the very bars of your own cage.
I mean, these symptoms probably feel a little too familiar, right? That late-night paralysis, the endless research that feels productive but gets you no closer to starting, and, that painful, painful gap between the genius idea in your head and the total emptiness on the screen. Society loves to slap a simple label on this, like laziness, but we know, you know, it is a much more complicated battle than that.
Okay, so here's the most important thing to get. You are not avoiding work. You're avoiding a very specific and very painful internal conflict. This tax is what you pay for that collision, that moment where your perfect, beautiful vision has to crash into the messy, awkward, imperfect reality of a first try. It feels catastrophic, so your brain will do anything in its power to stop it from happening. So that's the what is happening. But now we've got to get to the why. Because this is not some kind of character flaw. It's not a moral failure on your part. It is a deep, primal, biological survival instinct that has just gone completely haywire. And you know, just asking this question, well, it changes everything. The moment you stop looking at this as a lack of discipline and start seeing it for what it truly is, a self-protection mechanism, you can finally stop fighting against yourself and start working with your own biology.
So here's what's actually happening on a neurological level. It's called an amygdala hijack. Your amygdala, that's your brain's ancient alarm system. It literally can't tell the difference between a tiger hiding in the grass and the threat of you producing a quote-unquote average first draft. To that primitive part of your brain, the risk of your work not matching your self-image feels like a threat to your actual survival. So what does it do? It slams the panic button.
And since you can't physically fight a blank page, you could try, but it wouldn't do much. Your system chooses flight. And all of a sudden, cleaning your entire desk or organizing your inbox feels like the most urgent and important task in the world. Why? Because those little tasks give you a quick hit of dopamine, a little bit of temporary chemical relief from the stress of the real project.
And this formula just lays out the internal math perfectly. Your resistance isn't random, it's a calculation. It's the perceived stakes of the task times its complexity, all divided by your brain's current ability to regulate stress. And when that top part of the equation gets too heavy for the bottom part to handle, you overload. And this proves it. This is not a time management problem. It is an emotion regulation problem. The goal isn't to manage your clock, it's to manage your fear.
Okay, so if we're dealing with a terrified, primitive brain, we can't just bully it into submission with motivational quotes. We need a smarter strategy. We have to hack the alarm system itself. So welcome to the Bad Draft Protocol. We are about to install this right into your operating system.
And that's the key question, isn't it? How do you calm down that ancient guard at the gate who thinks a blank document is a saber-toothed tiger? Well, you don't fight it. You trick it. You negotiate by changing the entire mission.
And here it is. This is the core of the protocol. Your new mission, should you choose to accept it, is not to create quality. It is the exact opposite. For the next hour, your only goal is to produce utter and complete garbage. Why? Because by making bad the explicit goal, you completely bypass your brain's threat detection. If the goal is to write a disaster, oh, there's no threat of failure, is there? The alarm goes silent. You've just tricked the guard into standing down.
I want you to think about it this way. You are not trying to build the final, polished marble cathedral on day one. The immense pressure of that is what's freezing you in the first place. Your only job right now is to build the ugly, messy, temporary wooden scaffolding. It's not meant to be pretty. It's just meant to hold things up so the real work can begin later. And you have to remember the fundamental law of all creation. You cannot edit a blank page.
This analogy is just perfect. A sculptor spends hours, maybe even days, working with a formless lump of clay. They fail at making a face over and over and over again before they even get close to succeeding. That first draft is your lump of clay. You have to give yourself permission to make a mess.
So we've reframed the whole mission. We've neutralized the threat. Now what we need is a tactical entry point. We need a simple way to fire up that high-performance engine of yours without setting off that biological alarm all over again.
Okay, here are 4 surgical strikes you can use against paralysis. Step 1, set a timer for just 5 minutes. Your brain isn't going to panic over 5 measly minutes. 2, break the seal. Write something intentionally awful. Literally type, "This is a really bad sentence." 3, reward yourself for simply starting, not finishing, starting. Celebrate opening the file. This helps rewire your brain. And 4, when that urge hits you to check your phone or get up, just watch it for a second. Notice it, let it peak, and then let it pass. You're training your brain's brake pedal.
Now, what this all leads to, what this is all building toward, is a really profound shift in your identity. By using these tools, you move from being a victim of your own high standards to becoming the architect of your own process. You're no longer just the harsh critic of the final product. You are the calm, deliberate designer of the entire journey.
And honestly, this might be the most important takeaway of all.
Your worth is not tied to a flawless outcome. It is forged in the courage it takes to just show up, to face that blank page, to be messy, and to simply begin. It's about observing your own resistance without judging it, and then taking that first tiny step anyway.
So, the next time you feel that paralysis creeping in, don't fight it. Activate the protocol, lower the stakes, aim for absolute garbage, and give yourself the freedom to be messy. Don't be the genius who's frozen by fear. Be the architect, be the sculptor. But most importantly, just be the observer who begins.
You know that feeling, right? Where you're just staring at a task you have to do, but you feel completely and totally stuck, almost paralyzed. Well, in this explainer, we're going to get into exactly why that happens, and, more importantly, a super simple but powerful way to get yourself moving again. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, that feeling. It's that sense of being so overwhelmed that even thinking about the first step feels impossible. And look, if you feel this way, you're not alone. We've all been there. But the solution isn't what you think. It's not about just gritting your teeth and trying harder.
Okay, so here's the first big idea we have to get our heads around. This paralysis, it is not a failure of your character. It has nothing to do with willpower. It's actually a biological response. Your brain literally sees a giant, scary task and hits the emergency brake. So to get past it, we've got to learn how to outsmart our own brains.
And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? If our brain's automatic reaction is to just freeze up, how do we consciously, physically get back in control? How do we reclaim that driver's seat and actually steer?
Well, the answer isn't some big, brute force attack. No battering rams of willpower here. It's something way smarter, way more precise. It's called the 5-minute nano-start. And you can think of it like a surgical strike, designed to slip right past your brain's defenses and get you into action.
So what is it exactly? Well, the whole technique is built on this one tiny promise to yourself. You'll just work for 5 minutes. That's it. That small window is the whole secret. It's so small, so non-threatening, that it basically flies under the radar of your brain's alarm system, the amygdala.
And you can see the difference so clearly here. On the one hand, you've got brute force. It feels overwhelming, it sends your amygdala into a panic, and you end up just avoiding the task. But then you have the nano-start. Your brain sees it as low cost, no big deal. The amygdala stays calm, and that leads to action. It's a total game changer.
Okay, let's get into the how-to. To really make this work, we've got a surgical toolkit with 4 specific techniques inside. Each one is designed to break a different link in that procrastination chain. First up is the nano timer, and this part is absolutely non-negotiable. You set a timer for exactly 5 minutes. Not 10, not 7, just 5. Why? Because your brain just isn't going to freak out over a 5-minute commitment. It's the perfect little Trojan horse to sneak past all your internal resistance.
All right, tool number 2 is the messy first line. You know, perfectionism is maybe the #1 cause of paralysis. So how do we fight it? We start by being intentionally terrible. You open that blank document and you literally write this sentence. This is a bad sentence about a topic I am avoiding. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but it works. It completely breaks the tension of the perfect blank page and just gets you started.
The third tool, dopamine stocking, is all about hacking your brain's reward system. Here's the key. Instead of celebrating when you're finished, you reward yourself for starting. The second you sit down, or open the file, or write that one single word, that is the win. Give yourself a little mental high five. By doing this over and over, you're literally rewiring your brain to value taking action, the thing you can control, more than the big, scary outcome.
And our last tool is for dealing with those distractions that are going to pop up. It's called urge surfing. So when you're in the middle of your 5 minutes and that powerful impulse to check your phone hits, don't fight it and don't give in to it. You're just going to wait.
Because this chart shows what really happens. An urge, it's like a wave. It builds up, it hits a peak, and then it just naturally crashes. And this whole cycle usually takes less than 2 minutes. Every time you just notice the urge and let it pass without acting on it, you're actually strengthening your brain's brake pedal. You are literally training yourself to focus.
So we have these amazing tools, right? But to make them really stick for the long haul, we need to pair them with a pretty big shift in mindset. It's about moving into what we'll call the architect's mindset. This is where you find your value in the act of building, not just in looking at the finished building.
Man, this quote just hits the nail on the head. So many of us get stuck because we're obsessed with this imaginary, flawless final product. But that phantom of a perfect future is exactly what's killing our ability to make any progress in the real, kinda messy, imperfect now.
So you
get to choose. Are you going to be the critic or the architect? The critic is obsessed with the final product, demands perfection, and, well, stays paralyzed. But the architect focuses on having the courage just to start. The architect embraces the struggle and is totally okay with starting messy.
I really want you to let this one sink in. Your job is not to judge the work before it even exists. Your job is to lay the first brick, even if it's a little crooked. You are the architect.
So let's tie this all together. Getting back in that driver's seat isn't about pretending your struggle doesn't exist. It's about becoming a curious observer of it, and then using these tools to navigate through it.
So here it is, your new playbook. Use that 5-minute nano timer to make starting feel like no big deal. Kill perfectionism with a messy first line. Rewire your brain by stacking dopamine every time you start. Build incredible focus by surfing the urge to get distracted. And most importantly, own your identity as the architect.
At the end of the day, this isn't just a bunch of cool ideas. It's a call to action. I want you to think about that one thing you've been putting off. Forget about finishing it. Don't even worry about doing it well. Just ask yourself this one simple question. What will be your 5-minute start?